right, hey, sports fans, welcome to this edition of Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. Of course, this is an Inside Sports production. Fantastic week ahead now. We're all the way up to week 13 now, and we've got everything going on. More injury news. Someone got suspended for, it wasn't performance enhanced. Well, he thought the drugs enhanced his performance, but really they didn't. Well, we'll get into all that. But you know what? Before I go any further, let me go ahead and bring in my partner here, none other than Chris Lardieri. Follow him on Twitter at ChrisLSports, and also online, chrislsports.blogspot.com. You can read some of his fantastically sardonic musings about the NFL. I think that's the best way to put it. So, Chris, hey, without further ado, what's happening there, man?
Charles, as always, thank you. And in light of Thanksgiving, I am thankful to be on this show. Thank you for the opportunity. And as a token of my appreciation, if you kind of have a subpar moment tonight on this, I promise, on my YouTube channel, Chris Lardieri, I will only show the best highlights of Charles Smith from tonight's show. But I know you won't have any slip-ups, but just in case, I'm going to give you the RG3 treatment, okay?
The RG3 treatment. So that means this is going to be our last season together, or what?
No. It means that I'm only going to show you the good video, just like he did at Baylor and like he requested, when they review the game tape during the week. He only wants to see the good highlights, not the bad ones. I know you're a diva, but I'm offering that up to you since it's good for NFL franchise quarterbacks. It should be good for you, too, as a host of your own show.
Yeah, that's true. And, my ego is pretty fragile, so I really appreciate that.
Well, being a Dolphins fan, I can see why.
Just means I'm intensely loyal, that Dolphin jumping through the ring of fire. Back when I was 10 years old, it meant so much, and I guess it still means something now, but hey, it is what it is. Okay, let's go ahead and get into it, though. This week, now, one of the games I really wanted to talk about first was one that we differed on, and that's with the Indianapolis Colts playing in Arizona against the Cardinals. And, this was a little bit disturbing because here are the Colts. What in the world is going on? They lose this game, I think it was 40-11. Now, a couple of weeks ago, they got whooped by the Rams. What exactly is going on there in Indy? And the other part is head coach Chuck Pagano. Everybody knows about, the courageous fight with leukemia, coming back, missing a whole season. But at a certain point, remember, it's his job to coach out there, and right now, is he getting it done?
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost Jim Schwartz-esque, where the wheels are coming off the tires of a team that really could coast to a division title. I think Andrew Luck's trying to do too much, and though they've had a lot of injuries, even on the offensive line, they miss Reggie Wayne. I think the underbelly of what's going on here is Trent Richardson's been a bust. They still have no running game, and defenses are keying on the Colts. So that said, as I called it last week, one of the few games I got right, Arizona's an underrated team. If they were in the AFC, they'd probably be a division leader, if not in coasting to a wild card spot. They've got a very underrated defense, and the other thing that's hanging over this is Bruce Arians, the interim coach and Luck's offensive coordinator last year, is now with the Cardinals, and I think they really miss him.
And, with all the talk about Pagano, that kind of gets lost in the shuffle. So when you talk about head coaches, how good is Bruce Arians? He's looking fantastic, taking last year and this year together, two different franchises.
And if you ask your boy Big Ben with the Steelers, he misses him as offensive coordinator. He's waited many years to get his chance. He finally does, and he looks like he's the real deal. I know Carson Palmer is happy to have him.
Yeah, very true. And let's talk about that other team that you mentioned, the Detroit Lions. And how long has it been? It's taken, 70 years or something for the football gods to finally smile upon this franchise? Bobby Lane has been gone for a while. And here they're being, like we said last time, handed the division, and they're just finding ways to choke it away. Losing to Tampa Bay, Calvin Johnson, the one most reliable piece of the whole puzzle, Calvin Johnson, fumbling a ball away at the end to really seal victory for the other team. What in the world is going on? And, man, it could get ugly on Turkey Day, even though that's a home field advantage they've got. But they got to be feeling a lot of pressure going into this Thursday game against Green Bay.
Yeah, national TV, everyone's going to be watching, and although it looks like Aaron Rodgers isn't going to play, Matt Flynn coming off the bench has resurrected his career possibly again, battle back to tie the Vikings. this is not going to be a pushover like they thought it would be a few weeks ago. The Packers are fighting for their life. If they can hang in this and Rodgers comes back in a couple of weeks, they can make a run at this division because it seems like no one wants to win it. But, yeah, you cannot be dropping balls and giving the ball away like that in crunch time down there in the red zone. I mean, he needs to catch that ball. I know he's a great receiver, but that's inexcusable, especially with a team like Tampa.
Yeah, that's true. And, the other thing is we look at the Packers. Remember, Matt Flynn, he owes a lot to he really owes his whole career. All the millions that he's made is because of the Lions, because it was against the Lions that he threw for over 400 yards and 3 touchdowns, and that's what got him his big contract and the reputation that he might someday be something in the league. So, hey, you know what? The Lions have been very good to him over the years. They literally made him a millionaire.
Yeah, and watch out, could happen again. And people who remember a few years ago, that was a meaningless late-season game, and he lit up a porous Detroit defense. Could we see that again? Quite possibly. To make an analogy, you'll appreciate this as a Dolphins fan. I'd consider him a right-handed Scott Mitchell, wouldn't you?
Oh, man. And which I think is really funny because one of my buddies compared, back in the day, he called Scott Mitchell a left-handed Neil O'Donnell. So you can just follow the chain.
That's a good analogy. The man who threw away a Super Bowl got big money with the Jets. At least Matt Flynn had a good game to deserve his money.
Yeah, that's true. But that's going to be a great game. And then also, one of the other games that happened this past weekend, we thought they would get it done, but they didn't. The New York Giants come up short against the Dallas Cowboys. And is that it? Was that the final nail in the coffin for the G-men?
Absolutely. And you know what infuriates me most about that game? I'll be honest with you, at halftime I got frustrated. I went to the park with my kids. They could practice some baseball and softball. I enjoyed it. I came home just in time to see the Giants rally to tie it, got sucked back into it, and then just watched the defense implode. And I'm going to point the finger at 2 individuals who like to talk a lot the week leading up to the game, JPP and Terrell Thomas. And then look at JPP, 1 tackle, nothing else on the stat sheet, talking about how there's going to be blood left on the field. Yeah, well, apparently the Cowboys got a kick out of that because one of their players, I forget who, came in with some fake vampire blood into the locker room, and kudos to him because you know what? They gave nothing but bulletin board materials to Dallas. Everyone criticizes Romo. I know Joe Buck mentioned it late in the game. Can he rally his team? He did. Des Bryant really lit up the secondary. Mm-hmm. 0 pass rush whatsoever. And we're seeing now, everyone was optimistic that the Giants were going to make this run. Even though I'm a fan, I was skeptical. They really didn't beat anyone. Wasn't that impressed with the offense. And the red zone play calling by Kevin Gilbride, atrocious, calling nonstop runs, certain points in time on 3rd and 1, calling for bombs. Not sure what's going on there, but I think what we're going to see is a precursor to some changes in the Meadowlands. And I think Coughlin will keep his job, but I wouldn't be surprised if they start cleaning house, a.k.a. Akeem Nicks, and maybe some of the coaching staff.
Yeah, that'd be interesting there. And then, of course, something in Houston, Case Keenum's taken over. He's got the job there, seemingly. But, turmoil in Houston. I mean, for them to go from, I think this time last year they were 10-1. I think, and now they're 2-9 at this same point in the year. So I think my math is right there. That both of those add up to 11.
Yes, they do. Okay. Last I checked.
Right. But yeah, what's going on there? And you look at Coach Kubiak, who had his mini stroke, and that's one of the things where you feel the sympathy for the guy as a human being, much like we do for Chuck Pagano. But at the end of the day, it's his job to be a football coach, and they're in Houston. It looks like, he's not going to make it through the season, maybe. I think he's safe for a couple of more weeks, but I think he's going to be gone maybe before the season's over.
Yeah, I think there was kind of this hidden mandate that they needed to at least advance in the playoffs to make a run or he would lose his job. So 2-9, I think, all but cinches his fate. I feel bad for the guy. Like you said, he had a stroke, but this team's completely imploded. We won't see Matt Schaub. Who knows if Keenum's the answer? If they keep losing, they might have a shot at either the top pick or Teddy Bridgewater, perhaps.
Yeah.
Or one of the other top collegiate quarterbacks coming out. Dare I say Johnny Football. I really don't think he's worthy of a top 3 or 5 pick, but there could be someone else who emerges at the combine, and look for Houston to grab him. And it's kind of interesting. People forget Houston entertained the notion a couple off seasons ago about making a run at Peyton Manning. I wonder if they're kicking themselves now.
Yep, very well could be. And a lot of the coaches though just on the hot seat here. And do we need to talk about the whole RG3 situation? That's one thing, is RG3 and Shanahan, but also in general football news, something that we avoided because it had just been overdone by all the networks. Did the Jonathan Martin Dolphins kid, did it just vanish into thin air or what? I haven't heard anything since last week.
Yeah, you're right about that.
It was just gone.
Wondering, yeah, with in light of all the conspiracy theories that are out there these days, I'm wondering with the NFL investigator / attorney that showed up to investigate all this, if he just put a gag order on it and they've locked down complete communication about all this. You've heard a few things leak, but it looks like now with RG3 having his turmoil with Shanahan, the story we alluded to earlier about he only wants to see positive highlights during the week, that's become the scandal du jour in the NFL this week. So, something's going to give there, and if they completely implode and choke down the stretch, Dan Snyder, he's a Jerry Jones type. He wants to win, and I wouldn't be surprised if he bails on Shanahan and makes a run at someone like Gruden, who's rumored to be wanting to come back into the NFL. I really don't think RG3 was in shape. I think they rushed him back. You look at the guy on Monday, Aldon Smith was all over him. The guy was just getting knocked around. And let's face it, the guy's very talented, but he's probably, let's be fair, about 6 feet tall. He's not an Andrew Luck. He's not a big guy. He takes a pounding. You really shouldn't be running around, and they really need to get a line to block for the poor guy.
Well, not only that, here's Shanahan making, it looks like the same bad decision twice, because really he shouldn't have been in the game last season during that playoff game they had because he was injured. Now he's playing him this season, and clearly to me this season he shouldn't have been in. And you got Kirk Cousins, who's proven that, coming in as a backup, he can give you some good valuable playing time and some good valuable minutes. So I don't see why he's just seems intent on throwing RG3 out there, even though the guy wants to play, that's fine, and he has that Roethlisberger-like thing, like Roethlisberger and Tomlin. I think Tomlin needs to sit Roethlisberger sometimes, though that time is not right now, but in seasons past. But you're the coach. You can make those hard decisions. And I think he should have been sitting RG3 for probably, who knows, maybe up to this point in the season, because he hasn't been really himself all year long.
Yeah, I agree. And who knows if it goes back to last year, the controversy after the loss in the playoffs to Seattle with Dr. James Andrews. Was he fit to play? Was he not cleared? Maybe it's some spillover from that. And maybe if he pulls him now, he's sending a message that he's bailing on the team. But if you ask me, Kirk Cousins is better than a vast majority of the backups in the NFL. I mean, Scott Tolzien in Green Bay. I mean, look at some of the QBs Minnesota trotted out there. Great story by Matt McGloin in Oakland, but I think I'd still rather have Cousins starting for my team. So it's not as if they're pulling the plug on the season. I mean, at some point you have to admit, the guy's dirt, or we were wrong. We rushed him back.
Right, and you say he's better than a lot of backups, and probably he's better than about 8 or 10 starting quarterbacks in this league. Chad Henne is one that I can name offhand. I won't go any further than that, but let's just say Kirk Cousins. And granted, we only got a small sampling of what he can do. But, and he could be a Matt Flynn waiting to happen. But from what I saw last year of Kirk Cousins, he's an able-bodied QB.
Yeah, I mean, I'd take him over Geno Smith with the Jets.
Geno Smith. Now, there's a mess. There's a mess there with the New York Jets. Who do you go with going forward? Geno Smith, Mark Sanchez, or Matt Sims? What in the world, what kind of juggling act is that?
Yeah, I mean, Mark Brunell's retired, so they can't get him back. It's an interesting conundrum for good old Rex, who like to get themselves in these holes. If he bails on Geno, who he's kind of hitched his horse to right now, and goes with Sims, it might actually seal his fate to get run out of New York. Don Itzik, the new GM, he didn't hire Rex Ryan, and for all intents and purposes, everyone thought he was a dead man walking coming into this season. Mm-hmm. The Jets have hung around in albeit weak AFC. So at some point, if you're looking to make a run at the wild card, do you go for Matt Sims? I'm not saying he's great, but Can he be any worse than Geno Smith at this point? At least he won't turn the ball over as much.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, shocking to all of us, Chip Kelly finally named Nick Foles the starting QB there in Philly. So I guess he finally buckled under the pressure and said, "Oh, okay, we got one guy who has 16 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions. Another guy who is basically an interception machine and always injured, but I can't figure out which one I want to go with."
Yeah, that's one I'll never figure out. When I saw the story in the headline, I had to do a double take. When I saw Nick Foles' name, I just assumed it was another story about how he hadn't been named the starter. Good for him, although unless maybe Kelly thought by not naming him the starter, he was inspiring more and more every week. So who knows, if he throws a few picks this week and loses to the Cardinals, he may have to name him the interim starter or change that status, don't you think?
Yeah, well, you know what? And that's a tough defense to be going against, too. Because, the Cards can bring it, even though that game is in Philly this week. But that should be a good game, and that's going to be a good test for Foles. I mean, win, lose, or draw. That's one of those games where you kind of start to find out what the guy is made of, because he's going to face some adversity playing against that Cardinals defense, that's for sure.
Yeah, they've got a great pass rush and shut down corners. I mean, Patrick Peterson, quietly, probably one of the best corners in the NFL, and no one talks about him. And let's face it, if the Cardinals were in the NFC East, they'd be running away with it. So it's a good playoff kind of precursor right now, if you ask me. They beat them, and I think the Eagles have a legit shot to be a player to win the NFC East.
Yep, most definitely. And, now jumping back over to the big matchup that happened this past week, the marquee matchup, of course, is Peyton Manning going into Foxborough to play against Brady and the Patriots. 24-0 lead early on, but what happens? The Patriots come back, win the game late, and, big game plus cold weather plus Peyton Manning equals disaster. That's just the way it's always been.
Yeah, and that's ultimately why I picked the Patriots, knowing that the weather was going to be bad, and I just trust Brady and Belichick at home, especially coming off a loss. Let's face it, Peyton grew up in New Orleans, played at the University of Tennessee, played most of his career in a dome in Indy. So, we saw a hint of it last year in the playoff game. They lost at home to Baltimore. The guy, his arm's just not as strong, and let's face it, Charles, we're getting up there in years like good old Peyton. It doesn't feel so good when it's cold out, does it? Bones are a little more sore, but with that neck and the fact that he's just really not throwing a tight spiral anymore, going into a 20-mile-an-hour wind isn't a good formula. That said, I think at some point Jack Del Rio, Noshawn Moreno had a great game, and he was just going to pound the ball with him when they're heading into that wind, knowing that Peyton couldn't throw it. So I think that's a little bit misleading when everyone talks about how Manning had so few passing yards. But at the end of the day, he did rally his team to tie, but in overtime they had their shots. And I personally thought Belichick was insane to defer, play the win in overtime, but he looks like a genius now again for doing it because he knew Peyton couldn't throw into that win.
Yeah, so, and you know what, I'm just wondering, with all the turmoil, and we talk about how fragile a lot of the AFC teams are. And, the Broncos being one, the Chiefs who have lost 2 in a row now, them being another. They dropped that game to San Diego this week. Is it possible the Patriots steal a trip to the Super Bowl this year? It's a good year for someone from the AFC to steal a trip to the Super Bowl. And that could happen. Why not the Patriots?
Yeah, you look at the Ravens last year. Team just gets on a roll, watch out. And let's face it, no one's going to put up a fight in the AFC East, the Patriots. It's just a matter of which team has the fewest losses. And if the Broncos roll through and have one last loss in the Patriots, ultimately they're going to have home field. And I think that's what it's going to come down to. Because if the Broncos or anyone else have to go into Foxborough, other than the Ravens, who seem to have their number there, it's a very valid point. I can see the Patriots just off of the home field running into the Meadowlands to play for the Lombardi Trophy. That said, if they've got to go into Denver, where they haven't had as much success, it could swing in Denver's favor. So this last month's going to be key. It's all going to come down to home field in the AFC, if you ask me. I don't see Cincinnati going into Foxborough presenting a challenge, or the Colts, or any of these wild card teams. You really, if the Titans get in, honestly, I think they're one and done. Great story, but this is what's pathetic about the AFC. The Cardinals could be shut out of a wild card spot, or potentially the Panthers if they start losing some games, and a team like the Titans can get in.
Yeah, that's true. And then also, making a late run for everything, Pittsburgh Steelers getting on a little bit of a roll. And I like the way that we start the tomorrow with some great bookend games. You're going to have the Green Bay Packers at Detroit in the morning, then finishing off that night game, the Steelers at Baltimore. Both those teams at 5-6 and looking to get into that playoff race. But that's going to be a fantastic game. When you talk about blood will be spilt, it shall be spilt tomorrow night.
That will, and as we know, this game will likely be decided by a field goal, like it was this year, like it's been a lot in previous years.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of the good old, geographically speaking, similar to the old backyard brawl between Pitt and West Virginia in college, right? That's what it reminds me of. It's going to be a knockdown affair, and honestly, whoever wins this game could be in the driver's seat to make a run for a wild card spot. But out here on the West Coast, Charles, we get the best of both worlds. You can watch that game in the Lions Packers in the morning after breakfast. Get in the car to grandmother's house, wherever we're going to get our turkey, eat, and then once the tryptophan's sifting through our veins and knocking us out, we'll be awakened by Steelers Ravens in the evening.
All righty, so we'll go ahead and use that for a little bit of a segue into the picks of the week. What do you think?
Why not? You know what? I've been so mediocre and miserable, I'm letting you back into the race, so this is actually getting interesting.
Well, actually, you went 2-3 last week. I went 3-2, so I did make up one game on you. But you still got a tidy 9-game lead for the season on me.
If I keep picking like this, sub 500, you're going to chip away at me. At least we tied one game, right? We didn't get that one wrong. It could have been worse.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and you know what? We'll go ahead and start off with picks with that game, which is the Green Bay Packers at 5-5-1 because of that tie with Minnesota. Minnesota just won't win a game, even if you just cannot even hand them a win. But anyways, that's another story. The Green Bay Packers 5-5-1 going into Detroit. The Detroit Lions at 6-5, who, for all intents and purposes, should be running away with this division, but they're not. Now, I always talk about home field advantage. Is it an advantage or a disadvantage? In this case, if the Lions don't get off to a good start in this game, that home field advantage could turn against them in a hurry with those Detroit fans.
Yes, the Boo Birds will be out in full force. I'm actually going to go with the Lions here. I think they rebound, they rally. Traditionally speaking, they tend to play well on Thanksgiving. I know they lost last year to Houston, but I think with a lot on the line and the fact that they're not facing Aaron Rodgers and their window of opportunity is somewhat small, I think they take control. I'm not sold on Flynn or Tolzien. The Vikings really let them back into that game, blowing a 23-7 lead, but that's the Vikings. I don't see the Lions doing it. I think their defense will hold up, and who knows, maybe Ndamukong Suh on national TV can stomp someone or get some sort of flag that deserves a fine. What do you think?
Well, I think that very possibly could happen, but as far as the game itself, there's some old ghosts that are going to come back in this game, and I think the Lions, they got to be feeling it. It's one of those, you look at the whole thing of, here we go again. Could it really be happening? And it's going to happen tomorrow. I think the Packers are going to go in there. They're going to take this game and send the Lions season into real turmoil with their third straight loss. I like the Packers in this game. We got to remember, Detroit, they're going to do this. They might do this, might do that. Detroit lost to Tampa Bay last week. That's it. Granted, Tampa Bay has won 3 in a row now. I understand they're on a little bit of a roll, but no reason for them to lose that game. That was a game that they should have won. They needed that, didn't win it. And now I think with the Packers, the pressure is going to be incredible in front of that home crowd, and they're going to crumble. The Lions are going to crumble under that pressure. I like the Packers in this game.
It's good to know that you believe in this decade, Scott Mitchell, Mr. Ratcliffe.
Only for a game or two. Only for
All right.
a game or two. Yes. The old Mike Tomczak thing. Tomczak, good for 2 or 3 games, and then, he starts heading south. But Flynn hasn't had his 2 or 3 games yet, so he's good enough to get this win tomorrow.
Well, I'm going to make an obscure Lions reference, especially for my good friend Tom, who's from Detroit, runs the Sports Climax website. How about Eric Hipple?
Oh, my. Eric Hipple. Okay. Holy Gary Danielson. Let's go ahead and move on.
That's right, Billy Sims.
Okay, so, and the one that we talked about would be a bloodbath, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers at Baltimore to play the Ravens. Both those teams at 5-6, trying to get back into the playoff race, and right on the edge of it, Pittsburgh and Baltimore. I'm gonna go ahead and pick this one first here. Pittsburgh getting on a roll. Le'Veon Bell starting to run. Big Ben, ever since he came out really upset a few weeks ago when all the trade rumors were swirling and all that kind of stuff, he's been an animal. The Steelers rededicated themselves. Also, Brett Kiesel's supposed to be back tomorrow. He's missed the last 2 games. I like them against the Ravens. Ravens have not been playing great ball lately. They did beat the Jets last week, but then again, I think a local high school team beat the Jets a couple of days ago in a scrimmage. So I got Pittsburgh going into Baltimore, taking this game and getting themselves back in the playoff race.
You know what? I would love to differ with you, but I'm not sold on the Ravens. Yeah, they beat the Jets, but I mean, they kick 4 field goals and get a bomb down there late in the game to pull away. I'm going with the Steelers as well. I think there's some momentum there. I think, like you said, a fire's been lit under Big Ben's butt since the trade rumors started. Le'Veon Bell has really gotten the ground game going, and the defense has come around. And like you said, I think it'll be a bloodbath. I'm sure it'll come down to a field goal again, and I'm going to go with the Steelers. Now, that's that high school team that beat the Jets. I'm not sure if it's my alma mater, Bloomfield High School in New Jersey, but I'm going to check on that because there was a high school team that beat them. I just don't know who it was.
All right. Well, I always trust your research, so let's go ahead and move on here. Arizona Cardinals. We talked about the role they're on now. Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, the defense playing well. In Philadelphia coming off the bye. Nick Foles just named the starter. And Philadelphia, getting things going here. How would you see that one? Arizona against Philadelphia. Philadelphia firmly can get grasp of the NFC East rather in this game. How do you like this one?
You know what? In a normal world, I would pick the Eagles. I think coming off a bye and with the way Foles has been playing, I'm very impressed, to say the least. Chip Kelly's silenced a lot of the doubters. But I think this Arizona team's on a roll. I think they see an opportunity here to get a wild card spot. Like we had hit on earlier, they've got a tremendous defense. I like the way Carson Palmer's playing, and I think they sneak out a win here and surprise the Eagles. Foles has been doing a great job, but I want to see him do it against a defense like this. I mean, to light up the Giants or the Cowboys or the Redskins, that's all well and good, but this is a playoff caliber team we're seeing here with the Cardinals, and I really like their corners matching up against the Eagles wide receivers. I'm going Arizona.
All right, and for all the reasons you just said, I'm going with the Cardinals as well. I think if there's, I don't know what the weather's going to be like back there in Philly, but that could be a factor, and slow the Cardinals down a little bit. But even so, I think no matter what the conditions, I still like the Cardinals to win this game. Looking at the way they play, the levels of professionalism, the experience of Carson Palmer, who played all those years in Cincinnati as well. So I'm going to go with the Cardinals in this game as well.
Oh, we agree twice in a row. This is getting disconcerting.
Yeah, well, here's one that we should disagree on. Denver Broncos. Broncos coming off the bitter loss in the bitter cold. Denver Broncos in Kansas City to play the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs now won 9 in a row, lost 2 in a row. This would be the Chiefs' 3rd straight loss if they drop this game. What do you think? Denver at Kansas City.
Normally I'd pick the Chiefs, but they had a couple key injuries last week, including Tamba Ali. I think that really affected their pass rush, and Phillip Rivers took advantage of it and lit them up. Not sold on Alex Smith as a quarterback in this league. And, he's serviceable, don't get me wrong, but I don't think he's a title caliber QB. I think the Broncos rally, they come back. It might be cold, but with the way they ran the ball, I think Peyton will not have as bad a game as he did last week in the wind in Foxborough. And little intangible I'm going to throw out there. I believe John Fox finally made it back to Colorado after his heart surgery. Sure, it was hard to keep him away from the complex this week, and I think he'll have his fingerprints somehow on the game plan, and I'm going to go with the Broncos.
Okay, and, well, I got to agree with you again on that. The Broncos, because even though, by the way, they did lose Vickers and their defensive tackle is gone for the season, so both of them with some injuries up there, but I'll take a depleted team with Peyton Manning at quarterback as opposed to a depleted team with Alex Smith at quarterback. That's what it comes down to. So they both got injuries, both got some things to deal with, but I think Manning with the experience, and the Broncos just have more actual weapons than do the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm going to go with that and go with the Denver Broncos in this game too.
Yeah, I agree. At the end of the day, Donnie Avery's not scaring me.
Yep. All right. And a couple more games here. The Cincinnati Bengals out here in beautiful, sunny, it'll be rainy, I think, maybe, Southern California here. Cincinnati Bengals going to be playing the San Diego Chargers. The Chargers just went and beat the Kansas City Chiefs last week after having lost to the Dolphins the week before. So we never know. You know, the Chargers are like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Very good, Forrest.
Yes. Okay. That's all I have to say about that. So how do you see this one?
You know, every time I think the Chargers get some momentum, they come back down to earth. Nice win against the Chiefs, but like we said, with no pass rush, I think that really helped Phillip Rivers get his team back into that game. Normally the Bengals don't travel well, but for some reason, I think given that they're in the driver's seat and they're going to feel either the Ravens or the Steelers breathing down their neck, and the fact that San Diego is an atrocious secondary, I think that A.J. Green's going to have an outstanding game. Giovanni Bernard quietly having a great season at running back. And at the end of the day, I like the matchup of the Bengals offense over the San Diego defense. I think the Bengals defense will make some stops on Rivers, and I'm going to go with the Bengals here. I think they pull one out.
All right. Well, you know, I took a flyer on the San Diego Chargers last week when we did the pick segment, and I knew it seemed like Rivers would do for a big game. He kind of got it there in Kansas City, but, you know, we talk about the consistency or lack thereof when it comes to the Chargers. So I'm going to go ahead with you on this. I like Cincinnati to go ahead, and plus, depending on what happens, they know that with the Steelers, you know, Steelers and Ravens, they're coming now. So Cincinnati's got to start playing good ball. I like Cincinnati, too, to march into San Diego, take down the Chargers, and, well, that's about it. So one more game, New Orleans at Seattle. Now, here's the interesting thing. New Orleans and Seattle, both of them are great teams at home. Now, this game is in Seattle. However, Brandon Browner has just gotten suspended for violating the NFL substance abuse policy. He is I think it's the 7th or 8th Seahawk in the Pete Carroll era to receive a ban for either performance-enhancing drugs or substance abuse, meaning either, you know, steroids and the like, or he was, doing a little puff give on the side. So, Seattle, though, defensive in the secondary may be getting a little bit depleted there. They're tough at home, but against Drew Brees and that offense, will they still have enough to get that done?
I'm going with Seattle. While I've been on the Saints bandwagon since August and I picked them to win the NFC, I just don't see them winning outdoors up there on a Monday night in Seattle. And, you know, I'll put good money on the fact that it'll either be cold and or rainy, just going out and here. Even though the Saints have some suspensions, and, my friend Brian's a big Seahawks fan, and I told him earlier this week that Pete Carroll, I don't know what he's got going on there, a little Balco North, and he informed me, well, one of the guys got suspended for marijuana. I guess technically it's not all PEDs, and I think didn't one of the other suspensions have to do with amphetamines or too much Starbucks?
I think Adderall. Was it Adderall?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah,
one of the A drugs. I'm not up on my drugs, Charles. I'm sorry.
You're getting old.
Yeah, and I don't work for the DEA. I mean, my drug's Starbucks, to be honest with you. But I even though they'll have a hole in the secondary that Breeze could potentially light up, I just don't trust them. I'm going with a home field advantage. I'm going with the fact that I think Russell Wilson's playing really well. And let's face it, the 49ers should have beaten the Saints a few weeks ago down there in New Orleans. And, that's a team the Seahawks like to punch in the mouth, and with the way they play defense, I think they'll be able to contain Breeze just enough.
Yeah, I think so too. And when conditions are not ideal, the Saints are capable of looking pretty darn bad. That's what it comes down to. So I like the Seahawks as well. And when I look at Pete Carroll and what's going on there, and look at the way that he ran things when he was at USC, even though it translated into a national championship, but he still seems to be kind of hey, as long as we're playing well, anything goes. At some point, you got to look at the coach, right? When it comes to a lot of these guys getting suspended for either PEDs or substance abuse, it seems like he's not really running a taut ship over there.
No, I completely agree. I mean, where there's smoke, there's fire. And, whether it's Reggie Bush or PEDs, I just think Pete Carroll's always had this label as a player's coach. And when you get that, it's like you said, it turns into an anything goes type thing. And all I hear is, he's organized and he runs a tight ship and practices and they're very, efficient. But at the end of the day, the facts speak louder than anything else. And, if this continues and the Seahawks don't win, he might be looking for a job again soon. Now, that said, I know that's premature to say, but you can't be having all these suspensions. I mean, look at what went on in Miami and everyone made a stink. If this is happening in a major media market, not that Seattle isn't, but let's face it, it's up in the Northwest and not on a lot of the, let's say ESPN's radar.
Right.
But if this were happening in New England or New York or even Dallas or Chicago, I mean, there'd be a big stink going on. But I agree with you. I mean, to have this many guys suspended, and I just don't think it's right. And at least Reggie Bush is in Detroit. He can't blame him.
That's true. So, here we are. This is our Turkey Day broadcast. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. So, remember, let me just remind you, follow Chris on Twitter, and definitely follow him. He has some good stuff at Chris L Sports. Also, read him online, chrislsports.blogspot.com. You can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. And, Chris, do you have anything to add before we go ahead and sign off here?
Yeah, thanks for the shout-out on Twitter. I like to throw out my random observations during the game. I appreciate all the followers I've gained in the last few weeks. As we've hit on before, December is going to make or break a few teams. And looking forward a little bit, we got the Seahawks going into play San Francisco, which could ultimately decide the division. We've got Carolina and New Orleans having to face each other twice in the next couple of weeks. So, tune out on this. The Broncos are done, and this team's in it, and the Jets are legit. Like we said, if you're healthy and you gain momentum in December, those are the teams that are going to go. So, I mean, we're now here heading into the fourth quarter of the season. This is make or break time, and this is when it gets great. Quite frankly, I'm looking forward to it. And like you said, now that the Richie Incognito talks died down, we can focus on some football. What do you say?
Yeah, that's true. And, just the final thing on that whole Richie Incognito thing is I think this is, when you look at it, the power of the NFL, that they could take something like that and it disappeared. Gone.
Yep.
Completely.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I mean, short of David Stern and his ping pong balls with Patrick Ewing and the NSA wiretapping phones, I think the NFL's the other proverbial powerhouse in this country.
Yeah, there we go. All right, everybody. Hey, thanks for watching. We do this for you, the fans out there. Thanks to Chris for joining me. So for Mr. Lardieri, this is Charles E. Smith Jr. signing off. This is Football Talk. We'll be back next week right here. Thanks for watching.